The Reiki coach repeated these words like they were a lyric to her favorite rap. You are not a scared little child. Yet something about that phrase affected me. You are not a scared little child. She was associating that frightened inner child with our immaturity, claiming the reasons fight. We do not fight over flee, or we cry over claim, is that there's a part of us stunted and still believing the old wives' tale that anger is bad. Your sadness is just an approved, diluted version of anger, said my therapist just a few weeks before, which stood out to me as well. It was in a conversation with Josie that we were shocked at how growing up in toxic environments and dynamics can be different but the same. In her family, she was not allowed to be sad, having her parents' sadness uh, see her sadness as a sign of ingratitude, which was the last feeling they would tolerate in her between their own cheating on each other and trying to divide assets. For me, anger in my volcanic family was ironically and oddly not tolerated. For a family that yelled, unless I was saying a joke, I had to be on mute. Yet my tears were acceptable, even if deemed annoying. In my head, it was easy to associate my dad with immaturity and hypocrisy. He carried himself like an Italian mobster, the first one to speak on family and values, but living a personal history of unaliving them. Yet I had no idea I could hold the same attributes to a different degree. My father was a scared child that hid his sins like a kid would candy wrappers from his mom. Yet I was that little girl that pretended to disappear as her mom shopped for clothing, wondering if she would ever know I was under the rack of clothes, wondering if I wanted her to, and dreaming that somehow that rack was a road to another world, like in the movies. You are not a scared little child, she said, hitting her throat chakra gong, of which she claimed scared children have energetically clogged throats because they feel like they cannot speak or perhaps need a Claritin. Yet, between all the sounds and sage, I started to cry. As she walked around us, she asked, who would you be without fear? And I felt prompted to recognize that part of why I feared to be seen badly is because I was not seen well. All right, let's discuss. Let's heal. So I love that stuff. I love spiritual healing. I think the danger with me in terms of how much I love Reiki and meditating is that, and it's something that I've warned everybody, even my own clientele, people who've worked with me in terms of like life coaching and astrology chart reading. I tell them, everything you use is just a tool to better yourself, particularly better your relationship with yourself. It The minute it starts getting addictive or you don't have to do Reiki every day, right? You don't have a day without a tarot reading. A year without a tarot reading is actually great. It means you're probably doing really well and just don't need it. It's almost like these are the things you do to rebuild you, but once you're built, you move on. And I think part of why you don't move on is, yes, fear, but it's also, it feels so good. Like when you enter a meditative space, when you actually enter it, it's like, wow, is this eternity? Wow, peace feels nice, and it even makes you kind of reanalyze. Like, I think becoming more spiritual and meditative, and not spiritual in the sense of religious, but spiritual in the sense of character. I just want to be a good person that does well for herself and knows how to decide who she should do well for. And that felt, I believe in God, I love God, I obviously reference him a lot, but that felt like I just want to be that person, and I know he approves, but let me just take the wheel here. Scooch over, Jesus. And I think meditation and stuff like that, what's great is, yes, they come from religions, but they also have been commodified and commercialized enough to just be like, bring your yoga mat to a Brooklyn park and bend. Um, and she said that you are not a scared little child. You're not a scared little child. And I think sometimes what we do, and I'm guilty of this, is when we have, wisdom is commodified, kindness is commodified, virtues. You need a lot of intuition to know when someone is just acting virtuous versus being it, because somebody can look really, really nice. And I've talked about that, fake nice, just to see how much they could get of your genuine kindness. And I think with gurus, what I'm trying to measure up in, who knows if this woman was secretly a kidnapper, right? Um, but at that moment, it felt good and she healed me. And I say that because we definitely live in a nice little cancel era. We definitely live in a time where it's just hard to trust. And I think sometimes you just need to trust that not the messenger, but the message. Not whether or not she is the proper person to do this action as much as what is your reaction. And, it was this moment of I, my father was immature. Most addicts are, and most abusers in perspective are as well, whether they're abusing people or drugs. And my father did both. Um, but I didn't realize it's a dangerous thing, and it's something that I know when I talk about my mother versus my dad. I think it's like if the bar is so low, you naturally think you're high. I wasn't ever as bad a human being as he was. I'm not even, I can't even say I'm bad, but I'm not that good, especially to myself. And I just didn't associate my fear with immaturity. Because in my head, especially as the one living in my fear, it's natural and it's reasonable. And even if though I know it comes from my parents and how they raised me, my mom was always worried, always anxious, never knew how to feel safe or present in the moment, even when she tried. It's like, I want to have a really nice dinner, boom, the bill hits. And settling the dinner isn't that nice. I don't think the steak was worth it. Like that kind of constant energy. And my father was the type to starve you and eat the steak on your face. So it was this kind of, well, if that guy is my dad, then my mom is awesome. And I kind of emulated her because she was the better parent and person. Oddly enough, in the things that weren't best about her, like her anxiety, like her depression, like her ability to be unself aware that she was anxious and depressed. Especially because another thing you do, one thing that my father did was this idea of I'm not as evil as my own mom, so thus I'm not evil. And even if I am, it's her fault. She made me this way. And I find that there's moments when I do that. Like I just, my mother in my head is the epitome of anxiety, and my father in my head is the epitome of anxiety inducing. Like my father is what prompts worry, my mother is what is worried. And I kind of caught myself in the own trap that I've been talking about. And it was just weird because again it's obviously to a different degree, but it is immaturity and I can't escape that. And I hate that it's the immaturity born from fear, because I've spoken about this. My mother consistently reminds me of how big of a go-getter I was, as if she didn't murder that aspect of me. Because the problem was I became my mother. My mother was my material stability, and she thought if I'm your material stability, I'm your emotional, right? Like I gave you a roof, clearly I love you. I was my mother's emotional stability. I gave her affirmations. I gave her hugs. She didn't give that to me. And I think that's why I got so scolded when I would give her the contrary. Because I think my mother, and it could be a communal thing. I think it's common in Latino communities. I think it's common in oppressed communities, really, or oppressive families, traumatized families. This idea that, to disagree is an argument, especially if your child disagrees with you. Your child always has to agree. And I think one of my downfalls in terms of having these two parents that just really overwhelmed me to different degrees and different ways was that I, by my nature, am not combative. I'm not combustive, but I do live in a world that will ask me to be both. And I don't know how to feel those things and how to kind of feel them in ways. I feel like I allow myself to feel anger after someone has burned me 20 million times in a row. And obviously, that is people pleasing. And I think I did an episode about this prior of like me and Josie were talking, and sadness wasn't allowed in her household. That was a sign that she was being an ungrateful kid. For me, it was anger. And anger is ambition. Anger is passion. You do need to get angry. You do need to fight back. You do need to tell, be Gandalf and get the staff and say, "You shall not pass." Lord of the Rings reference. Um, and I just wasn't allowed that. In order to eradicate my boundaries, they had to eradicate my anger, because your anger keeps your boundaries. Your anger is what ignites when somebody crosses them. And I was so scolded for being upset, because kids don't really get angry. They get frustrated, they get upset, but they very rarely do you see a child having a rage maniac moment, right? But just disagreeing was so not popular. And I think it's because and it's something I see now. There are moments my mother asks me of my opinion of her behavior, and I'll say that sounds dumb, and it sounds like you're about to get used again. She's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're a bad person. I can't believe you think these things." And it's this moment of, oh, she wanted the Deandra that says you're perfect and you only make right moves, and your entire life is a testament to how you only make right moves for yourself. But I'm in a space, and it's because of Reiki, where I realize I can't be the smartest person to be unhappy. I can't be the most peaceful person to be bored. I can't be the most ambitious person to be stuck. And I come from a family and a long line, particularly in terms of my father, that does believe, I'm the best human being to harm others. That was my father's mentality. And if you don't pay consequences, it's a natural mentality. I mean, Donald Trump is going to get way worse now that he's president. We gave him a reward. We rewarded him. He didn't, it's not that he avoided punishment, it's that he got rewarded for bad behavior. And I just, my father will die and so will I. He's 100 years older than me. Why am I so scared to live? I'm young, I'm beautiful, I'm great. And it's because I I don't think my goodness was celebrated. Not enough by my mom, not at all by my dad. I don't think I was not a child. Kids need human touch. My mother's family were not huggers. I was known as the hugger, and they liked that. But I didn't get hugged back, and I certainly didn't get hugged first. I was praised for being magnetic in a family that felt tied to each other for no reason. I don't know, with how hurtful we could be towards each other, I don't really understand how how we loved each other if we didn't like each other, you know? But it makes sense why we praised how funny we were and how good at cooking we were. And the same thing with my father and his family. They all hated each other. They were constantly fighting, constantly pressing block on the phone, but praised themselves for how their kids got along better. Only eventually they didn't, right? Because that's the thing, children are receptive. And eventually they join their parents and they break off and they join the battles. And you act like you didn't ask them to be your warriors, but you rewarded them for being it. And I think my mother rewarded me for giving her affirmations that she never gave me, for defending her in fights that she put herself in, all while judging me if sometimes I did want to fight back at her, right? And I love that my therapist said that your sadness is just an approved, diluted version of anger. And that's what sadness is. It's anger that just feels too ashamed to feel bold, to feel loud. So it just quietly whimpers in darkness on a pillow. And it's so strange because my family, I feel like with how much my father's family was always fighting and kind of Game of Thronesing each other, House of Dragon, right? And with my mother's family, tussling between being hilarious and hellish. I just find it so funny how Deandra couldn't be angry because it was really targeted. I think my cousins were allowed more breakdowns and they also did get more praise, and I don't think that's without due than I was. And and it's something I realize now, they did get more praise. Perhaps it's because having that's interesting. I wonder if it's because when you have boundaries, you make people earn you. You make people chase you. And I've never done that. I am the chaser. I chase everybody. I run for the hills after people. And I'm really trying to enjoy more people that chase after me. And I think it's because I'm shocked when I like somebody that they don't like me. And I'm shocked that when somebody lets me enter their world, they don't make me more center in it. And I think it's also, to be fair, I think we make people say, be appreciative for what you get. But if you never get what you want, appreciative becomes tricky. And it's not only about appreciating the people that like you, but finding the people that you like and like you back. And I never did that. I kind of just made do with the people that liked me and chased after the people that didn't, and called it all passion, called it all life. And now I like people that like me because I like them, if that makes any sense. Like I'm finding more people that make me laugh and I make them laugh. I'm finding more people that are have personalities that I've always wanted in my life. Funny, stable, passionate, smart. Because I've had every type of friend. I've even had the dumb friend, which, by the way, dumb people can be incredibly sweet. I have just, I think I've talked about this in the knock knock method. I've set up my life to be whoever wants to open the door, come on in. So I didn't exactly ignore and underappreciate people that liked me, even though I wasn't crazy about them. I think I treated them like my purse that I would run with after the somebody who was rejecting me. Like, you can come, you could join me as I chase this person. And I don't know if that's necessarily, it's wrong, but it's not necessarily cruel. And I say that because I am the type of personality that I entertain everybody, whether I like you or not. I am funny, I am smart, I show up. And I think that's what has burnt me out. That's what has made me draining towards myself, that I'm good to everybody, no matter what. And I have no selectivity process. I completely ignore my intuition. And I do it because doing that made me safe as a child, but as an adult, it endangers me. And when she was gonging it up to clear my throat chakra, it hit me. It totally, totally hit me that everything that I used to survive as a child, making myself small, hiding my opinion, being so scared of just confrontation for no reason, and then blaming myself if I still landed in it, because that was the thing. I did everything to avoid confrontation and still landed in it, still was confronted by my parents, by their families, and it just felt like couldn't win one. Guess I have to go smaller. Instead of saying, go F yourselves, go F yourselves. And I think, and this is what I talk about in terms of temptation, and I think a lot of abuse victims have that temptation to just, call my dad's family and tell them, this is the guy. Obviously, knowing they would not believe me, even if I have proof, but also knowing that success is the best revenge. He was successful at ruining my life. But I think I've talked about this creative versus destroyer energy. My father was really good at destroying people and kind of like taking their identity, taking their energy. He didn't, he only got better as someone else got worse in his life. Now, but when you're a creator, you make energy out of nothing. And I think what his abuse caused me to believe was that I had no spark, that I had no capacity to make a spark. I think Oprah said it once. It's like you don't even dream to dream. But now I'm the dreamiest bitch I know. Scared little child no more. Check out daddyrecovery.com. Check out deandrevutherall.com. And check out Harleen on all music platforms.